everyone. Welcome, and thank you for being here and sharing your time with us today. We're really here because of our wonderful partnership with ACCES that allows us to provide these wonderful learning opportunities. And so, to be honest, I really wish when I was younger I had a community that I would be able to lean on to provide this type of support. So wonderful that ACCES is able to provide these webinars with us. So today it's such an important topic, more than we realize, getting and building good credit habits. So that's really what we're looking at today. So next, I will have a look at the agenda for you. So we'll start off, we've already started off with our welcome from ACCES. We'll continue that with RBC. You'll hear from myself and Felipe, who you'll get to meet shortly. We'll go right into the presentation and give you all the good stuff. And then, of course, as Keisha promised, we do have a part for question and answer, so feel free to enter it into the chat, and we'll get to that in the end. And then we'll have closing remarks from both sides. So that is what the next hour is going to look like. And so who am I, right? Who's talking to you here on the screen? So as mentioned, my name is Farah Mohammed. I am a digital banking advisor with the Newcomers specialist team. So my journey with RBC started in June of 2019 as a client advisor. I mainly dealt with day-to-day transactions, balancing at the end of the day, and really providing support to neighboring branches as well, wherever needed. I enjoyed my role very much, and I joined various groups and committees like digital enablement, employee giving, and diversity and inclusion, one of my personal favorites. So I was able to get promoted to banking advisor, and I heard about the wonderful work that Naz and her team was doing, and of course, I had to be a part of it. So that's how I found myself here. And so yeah, that's just a little about me. So moving on. This is, why we're here, right? Newcomers helping newcomers. Here at RBC, many of us have been a newcomer or know someone that has, and we see firsthand some of the challenges that one can face, and that's why we have this special team. So with that being said, I would like to pass it over to Felipe to introduce himself and the team. Oh, sorry. Actually, before we do that, we'll talk a little bit about the RBC vision and values. I'm just excited to introduce our team because we have such wonderful people we work with. So don't worry, you'll get to meet him shortly. But yeah, a little about RBC before we get into that is, when you think about an organization, it's important to know, the purpose and vision. And this is something that's meant to inspire and motivate you. And also, you can do the same if you share the same. So RBC's purpose is helping clients thrive and communities prosper. Our vision is to help and be amongst the world's most trusted and successful financial institutions. But of course, it's not just about purpose and vision. Like us, an organization must also have values. So we're an organization of 86,000, employees and every day counting. Myself, Felipe, and Nazanin, we're all guided by the same set of values, and that's the RBC values. So we put clients first. We always earn the right to be our client's first choice. We understand our clients' needs, which help build lasting relationships. We show empathy and care, and bring the best of RBC by offering the right advice and solutions. Next, you can see on the screen there is collaboration. We work together by believing and trusting in the teamwork. With collaboration of our partners and community, we win as one RBC. And of course, accountability. We take ownership and responsibility. Diversity and inclusion. RBC embraces diversity, as you can see here. We speak up for inclusion and empower people to grow and achieve more together. And we have integrity. We hold ourselves to the highest of standards to build trust. So now I'd like to pass it over to Felipe to introduce himself and our wonderful newcomer specialist team.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Farah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for taking the time and investing in yourself and learning something new, or perhaps maybe to refresh your too, right? So to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Felipe. I'm a banking advisor here at RBC. So to speak a little bit about myself, as you can see on screen, back in 2008 in May, I joined RBC as a part-time client advisor at a branch out in Cali, Ellesmere. I started as a client advisor, and I gained interested in learning more complex transactions as I started seeing them more often. And that assisted me in becoming a client advisor expert. From there, I moved on to being a central teller. And for those who may not know what a central teller is basically the person who balances the branch at the end of every day. During my time as a client advisor and a central teller, I won multiple quarterly awards within my branch location as well as my regional area. And now I'm a banking advisor here for the RBC Newcomers specialist team, providing financial literacy for newcomers as well as students. previous experience in property management, which I studied at Humber College, and I also enjoyed the fashion and creative music and performed at Canadian Music Week. And for those who may not know what the Canadian Music Week is, it's a festival of just nothing but amazing talent that's coming into the country during the month of May that gets performed in front of a Canadian audience. So there's international artists as well as Canadian artists themselves performing their musical talents. Enough about me. Now I'd like to introduce my team. This is our East Toronto core team of Newcomers specialists. It's not about the location that we can be contacted virtually, and you can reach out to us basically almost anywhere. As you can see here, it's guided by our community marketing manager, Mellon, and our assistant vice manager, Nazanin, and you have myself and my colleague, Sarah, who are the digital banking advisors. I'd also like to introduce our support team. Even though we're a small group of 4 right now, we have a strong support team throughout the GTR communities in our virtual settings. The greatest aspect of our team is that we have so many different skills and expertise, and we're all about together as one RBC. And we're able to do this with our community partners like ACCESS, who is the key partner to this incredible journey. So we have enhanced the synergy to our internal partners, communities, and clients for a more holistic approach. And we focus on putting our newcomers and clients at the center of everything that we do, and our goal is to be prepared and proactive in our clients' paths at all times. And since we opened our doors in 2019, we're able to create this awareness to our community involvement. Here are just a few of the in-person events in 2019. If you take a look at the photos, you'll see the different offices that we engage in with helping the communities. So thank you to ACCESS for today's opportunity. And as of March of 2020, we have taken our branch digitally, and we facilitate our events online. We provide financial literacy ranging from buying first home in Canada, getting ability good credit in Canada, saving for retirement and fraud prevention, just to name a few. And we also provide advice that goes beyond banking and our banking system. And our experts help explore different fields like HR tips, role discovery, job search. So with that being said, let's begin on today's workshop, which is covering credit. So getting and building good credit. So you gotta ask yourself, what is credit? So credit is the ability of a customer to obtain goods and services before payment, based on the trust that the payment will be made in the future. So credit in the simplest form is a way to borrow money. It is the ability to get something before paying for it, based on a promise to be paid in the future. Now, there are a couple of players when it comes to credit, and we're probably asking ourselves, who are they? So let's have a look. So first, we have the borrower. The borrower is the person receiving the money, the goods, or the service on a promise to pay it back. On the other side, we have the lender. And technically, the lender is a person who's willing to lend money, goods, or services to someone else to get paid back later. This could be banks or anyone who has the service that you need. The amount being borrowed is called the principal. Now, I'm sure everyone in this room has lent money to a friend and family member at some point in time. Whether it is small or big, the amount borrowed is considered the principal. So let's say your friend asked to borrow $15. What would be some of the questions or factors to think about when they ask to borrow money from you? So one of the things you have to ask yourself is, do you have $50 to lend? Are they a trustworthy friend? Are they going to keep their promise to repay? Will they have the money to pay you back in a reasonable time frame? Will it be in a few days? Perhaps it might be in a few weeks. What if they ask you for $500? That's a little bit different now, right? So $15 you may not need back urgently. It may not be such a big deal if your friend asks and never pays you back. But $500 is a different story. You may not want to risk not getting it back in case you may need that money yourself. Now let's think on a larger scale. Let's think $5,000 or even $500,000 now. Now you can see how lending in larger amounts of money can be a lot riskier. So those questions we just asked ourselves are also important questions and considerations for lenders. And we're going to go through this with some examples of risk factors. So typically, lenders charge the risk for the risk of lending interest for their money. So lenders charge interest for the risk of lending their money, and it's typically a percentage amount borrowed, as we are now calling it the principal. It compensates the lender the risk of lending it, as there's always a risk that they may not get it back. That's why lenders charge interest. So the most important rule about borrowing on credit that everyone must know is simply that all forms of borrowing comes with a cost. It's never free. As you can see on the screen, it's always a principal plus interest, which equals the amount that should be repaid. And to keep your credit card in good standing, you must pay back the lender whether it's a bank or a credit card company or a car dealership. And don't worry, if you don't know what a credit score is, we're going to get into this a little bit later in our presentation. So you must pay the principal or amount borrowed plus the interest. This means that you always pay back more than what you initially borrowed. And this is the most important rule about credit, that you have to make your payments so your credit history is not damaged. So on the next slide, you're going to see that we're going to have a statement. Now, majority of companies or banks do have the same structure of statements. As you can see, there is, the new balance, the minimum payment, as well as the payment due date. Now, it's important to know how to read a credit card statement so you're not missing due date and you're not paying more than you have to in interest. The ideal is to pay your full balance off by the payment due date, but if it's not possible, you need to make the minimum payment amount so that you're paying the principal plus the interest. And paying off the minimum amount due does not impact the balance. So it's always better to pay a little bit greater than the minimum balance. Also, one thing you want to take into consideration when looking at your credit card statement is to make sure that all your transactions align with what you've done and to make sure that you are the person that has made those transactions. So you can actually catch on to things if there's anything that fraudulent has happened, and you're not paying for something and paying interest for something that you haven't done. So it's always good to look at your statements and be aware of them. So before we go any further, let's discuss one area that all of us at RBC always get asked questions about, and that is what's the difference between credit and debit. So credit is money that is borrowed, most commonly in the form of a credit card. Debit draws the money that you actually have in your bank account. Most standard bank accounts will come with a debit card. Typically, it looks very similar to credit cards. You use similarly when you shop with tap and pay, but a debit card takes money directly out of your account. So you have to have this money in your account in order to cover your purchases, or else the transaction will most likely be declined, and that can be a little bit embarrassing at times. And to recap, purchasing on credit is buying something with money you are borrowing. And purchasing with debit is buying something with money you actually have at that moment. All the factors we talked about that affect credit just a moment ago do not come into play when you purchase with a debit card. So if you can't get a credit card or you don't want one just yet, some retailers will allow you to buy online with a special type of debit card. And many allow you to buy online with a special with this debit card and allow you to make these purchases online. If you're interested in this product, I can provide more information about this, and it's called RPC Virtual Visa Debit Card after this section. Okay, so if you do need to borrow money for an important purchase or something unexpected comes up, one thing you definitely have to know is that you have choices. Just like the next slide we're going to see on the screen, there are many different types of credit cards to choose from, just like the donuts on the screen. And not just credit cards, but also different credit products. So I'm going to talk about the three most popular types of credit here in Canada. And they are credit cards, personal loans, and lines of credit. But remember, borrowing is never free, and you always have to pay back the principal plus the interest, no matter what the credit product you choose. All right, so let's take a look at the second form of credit or borrowing. As you can see on the screen, it says personal loan. So personal loans are best when you need to borrow money on a specific purpose, such as a car or a student loan for a post-secondary school or for a longer period of time. Car loans are usually secured while student loans are not. Your car is the collateral used against your loan. Basically, if you don't pay it back, they can repossess or take your car. So when it comes to interest, as discussed earlier, you'll be charged the principal plus the interest on your payments right from the beginning. But because the loans are intended to be paid over a longer period of time than credit cards, the interest rate on the loan tends to be quite a bit lower than the interest rate on a credit card, usually around 5%, or it could be a little bit more. And when it comes to the terms on paying this credit product, like the personal loans, depending on how fast you would like to pay it back, you choose what's called a term, generally between 1 and 5 years. The faster you pay back, and the less you're paying in interest. Now, keep in mind that when it comes to personal loans, they are open. So if you want to make extra payments, you can to bring that principal down. So you're paying, your time frame is shorter when it comes to paying it down. And your bank can set up automatic payment schedules that works for you, and the most common being is bi-weekly or monthly, at an amount that you're most comfortable with, such LLC for short. And it's the most flexible way of borrowing money. So a line of credit is different than a loan because you're not using all the money at once to pay for something right away. For example, if you apply for a $10,000 line of credit and get approved, you have access to up to $10,000 to withdraw in the amount that you need as needed. So you don't need to necessarily use the full $10,000. You have that available to you, but if you only need to use $1,000, you can use only those $1,000 if you like. And when it comes to security, it's similar to personal loans. In some cases, the line of credit is secured. And when it comes to interest rates vary, but are typically lower and more moderate than personal loans and credit cards. One of its greatest features is that you aren't charged interest until you start using money from it. So what that basically means is that if you apply for a line of credit, you have it accessible to you. If you don't use it, you're not paying anything. The moment you start using from $1 to the amount that you have borrowed, then you will start paying interest on whatever the amount that you have taken off on the line of credit. And when it comes to terms, the terms are flexible and can depend on the amount of your line of credit. And payments are similar to a loan. You can choose to make monthly or by monthly amount, automatic amounts paid directly from your account to the loan at the amount that's most comfortable to you. But keep in mind that when it comes to line of credit, typically the interest is the thing that comes, the payment that comes out of your account, and that is considered a payment, but it's not considered a principal payment. So it's still up to you to make a payment towards the loan, so that way you bring down the balance of the amount, which would be considered a principal payment. Now we're going to talk about the first option that we have, which is a credit card. So let's go through some tips of how to start building your credit history and credit score early. And again, if you're not sure what we mean by credit history or score, we're going to go through it more in detail just shortly. So credit cards help with smaller purchases and online purchases. So today, it's common practice that most online shopping sites and subscriptions require a credit card to complete the transaction, whether it's going through Amazon to buy something for the house, or booking a trip, or paying for your Netflix or Apple subscription. They only take credit cards. Now, in general, a credit card is not secured. So you're probably asking yourself, what does this mean? So this means that you do not have to put a collateral to qualify for the maximum credit card limit that you've been approved for during the application process. So collateral is an asset like the car you own outright or a piece of property like your house that a borrower offers a lender as security for a loan. And credit cards do not ask for this, and your credit limit is usually based on your income that you're bringing in. And credit cards typically charge higher interest rates, generally between 10% to 20% for two main reasons. One of them is because credit card loans are non-secured, just as we described. And the second reason is to offset the risk that the borrower may not pay back the loan. Remember we talked about risk factors a little earlier with the $15 or lending $500 to a friend. This is one of the biggest ones for credit cards. And the term refers to the annual fee on a card, which is due once a year. Some credit cards do have an annual fee, so you will have to pay an annual fee on the card. It ranges anywhere between $20 to even up to $400, depending on the card you have. And that's typically because they have different benefits that you can benefit from. And payments on your credit card are due monthly, and more specifically, every 21 days. It's important that you keep track of your due dates by checking your statements online and setting up payment alerts. Well, payment alerts is basically when it's coming close to the date, you will get an alert saying you have to make a payment on a minimum due balance on the due date of your credit card. And the smart way to avoid paying interest is by paying off your balance or the amount you have borrowed in full by the payment due date. This way, you won't be charged any interest. And this is for people who don't like paying interest, or you do have a 21-day grace period to pay it off before they start charging any interest on the amount that you use. If you can only afford to pay the minimum required by the due date, it will be included the principal plus the interest charges. And it's always good to make the minimum payment, so that way it doesn't affect your credit history or your credit score. And if you miss your payment altogether, many banks will increase your interest rate, usually until you make your minimum payments again, and then the rate goes back down. Now, typically, when you do miss your payments, let's say between one or twice, the interest rate may go up to as much as 24.99%. And in order to bring it down, you do need to show consecutive payments for roughly about a year. That's when they will bring down your interest back again to what is typically 19.99% on the credit card purchase rate. Now, what do you need? So what do you need to know what kind of credit you need? Like most everything in life, it depends. It depends on what you need for or on your personal circumstances. Let's take a closer look at each one. And one thing to note before we get started, it's important to manage your debt responsibly. If you need help, ignoring the problem will impact you in the future. So please reach out to us, and we can help you set up a plan to manage your debt and get back on track. The same advisors that assist you with providing you information with regards to credit cards or even any credit product and applying for them can assist you in putting you back on track if you do come across any hardship, financial hardship. If you need any advice, that is what they're there for. So always reach out to us. So when it comes to credit cards, you got to ask yourself what's important to you. So on the next slide, you see what you may not know is that not all credit cards are the same. Credit cards are often come with additional rewards that can really add up as you use your credit card. These rewards are handy and unique ways to help you save money on your purchases. For example, some come with cashback credit based on your purchases. It could be 2% cashback credit on grocery store purchases, 1% cashback credit on all other purchases. And at the end of the month, this percentage is then applied to the balance owing on your credit card. Now, this is a good way to save. Some give you reward points that you earn with when you make your purchases, and then can be redeemed for different things like gift cards, merchandise, and travel rewards. Now, me personally, I'm a huge fan of the rewards. I do have a travel card, and I've actually saved up my reward points to have traveled from here to Italy and back just on reward points alone. And some provide extra travel insurance coverage and extended warranties on purchases. Now, the good thing about this is that, to give an example of extended warranties, some cards allow you to purchase electronics, and with the extended warranty, let's say, for example, you go to Apple, you buy iMac or a MacBook Pro. Now, typically, Apple will give you warranty, which is the Apple Care for 1 year. But if you purchase your laptop or your desktop with a credit card, what ends up happening is after that 1 year of Apple Care, an extended warranty does get applied to the laptop or the desktop. So you have another year of extended warranty. So if anything does happen to your device, you can take it back in, pay with the credit card, and the credit card company will get back pay back whatever the damages were. It's also important to take the time to compare different cards because some have no annual fee, and interest rates can vary between cards as well. Like we said, typically it can range between 10% up to 20% on the card. And some of these cards that have benefits to them do come with an annual fee, just due to the fact that you can benefit from these cards. So when choosing, you have to take the time to think about what's most important to you, how these cards can benefit you when it comes to rewards, cashback, as well as the different insurances that they may have that you can actually benefit from when you're either traveling outside the country or when you're making purchases when it comes to electronics. I hope all this information was useful to you today. I hope you can take it and apply it, and it can help you, decide what credit product works best for you or what credit card works best for you next time you decide to apply for a credit card. Now I'm going to pass it to my colleague Farah. She's going to continue with the rest in regards to credit score and credit history.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Felipe. And thanks for sharing your story about the points, because it's such a nice bonus. I know our team actually here is huge fans of the points with our credit cards. Many of us have redeemed things. Like Felipe, I've also actually been able to redeem flights this past year to go to Europe as well. So it's definitely something handy, and who doesn't like, right, to get a free flight? So wonderful. So so we'll be moving on to the next part here, which is getting credit. So, in this next section, as Felipe mentioned, credit is something very important. And we ask ourselves, why would someone want access to credit? So there are many reasons, right? Maybe you really need to buy a car, you want to start your own business, or, there might be classes that you want to take and you want to go back to school. So there's many different reasons. Maybe this month, right, you might be short for rent and you need something to kind of get you, through that. So many different reasons why someone would need access to credit. And so we'll go into, some of those factors. So looking at the screen here, we can see there's 5 different factors. So anytime you want to borrow money, lenders like RBC will look at a number of factors. And so we call these the 5 C's of credit. So first up is your character. And this is, how responsible you are when it comes to managing your finances and taking responsibility for your debt. So next is capital, and this is the amount of money you have available from your savings, investments, and so on. And then it's your capacity, or your ability to repay your debts. So next is collateral. So such as assets. This can provide a security for a loan, and this would include something like real estate, investments, or even your car. And then last and final factor on there is your credit history, which is essentially your track record for repaying loans and paying your bills on time. And now, of these 5 factors, this is probably the most important one. So we'll get a chance to kind of go into that a little bit later. So moving on, the moment you start using any type of credit, a credit report starts to get built in your name. And anytime you apply for credit, the lender can have access to this report and see your credit history. And this is your history of being able to pay your bills on time. So your credit history is really a summary of your credit. It's really a summary of your credit history, and on that you'll have like your name, your address, your social insurance number, and then there'll be your credit cards, your loans, how much money you owe, and do you pay your bills on time? Do you pay your bills late? And really giving them that report about how you manage things. So why is a credit report important? So businesses, they want to know about you before they lend you money. So think about it. Would you rather lend money to someone who always pays their bills on time or who is always late? Businesses want to look at your credit report to learn about you, and then decide if they want to lend you money, give you a credit card. And another thing is that they also sometimes employers would want to look at your credit report when you're applying for a job. Even cell phone companies, insurance companies might be interested in your credit report as well, because they want to make sure, are you a person that's going to be able to be trustworthy and pay your bill at the end of the day. So let's move on to a credit score. So this is also equally important, and it gives you an idea really of how someone views your report. So this is a wonderful chart here for you to see. So really, this is a picture of how well you manage your money, whether you've paid your bills on time, what you have outstanding, and if you have any missed payments. Over time, this forms a pattern of how well you pay or don't pay your debt. And anytime you apply for a loan or credit card, lenders will look at your history to help them decide, whether or not they should accept your application. And as I mentioned before, even landlords, right? They will look at that to see if you're the kind of person who pays their bills on time. So in simple words, your credit score is a number that's assigned to you, and it shows your ability to, how you're able to borrow money and repay it. So looking at the screen, you can see here, the higher the number, the better. And in Canada, credit scores can range from 300, which means that you're either, you're just getting started, or maybe you haven't been responsible, and it goes all the way up to 900. And so just like a test, right? The higher the number, the better. So according to TransUnion, a reputable credit agency, 650 is the average for score for most Canadians, just to give you an idea. Now, really, when it comes to this whole calculation, right, how do we get this? To calculate an individual score, a specific set of risk rules are applied to an algorithm. And this draws some assumptions about the individual spending habits and then assigns a number, which is where we get the score. So lenders, may also use your score to set your interest rate and credit limit. And so obviously this can have a huge impact. So if you have a high credit score, you may be able to get a lower rate on loans, which can save you money over time. A good credit score can also help you qualify more easily for loans. Now that can mean, big savings for you because, you'll be paying lower in interest and have greater repayment flexibility with someone with the low credit score and poor credit history. So definitely it will make a difference in your life when it comes to that. Now, let's talk about TransUnion and Equifax that we have here. So, there are two national credit bureaus in Canada that collect your information and generate your credit reports and your credit score. So we have Equifax and TransUnion. So just keep in mind, a big note of caution is that you don't want to trust other sites that claim to provide this information, as they may not be trustworthy. So credit reports are free every 12 months, and you should request a free report once a year to make sure that the information is true and accurate. And it's very important to do this. Why do you want to do this? Because creditors and sometimes even employers can request this report, and you'll want to make sure that it represents who you really are. So you can also request your credit score from Equifax and TransUnion, but there may be a charge. And that's why I'm actually really happy to tell you that you can check your credit score right through RBC's online banking. So let's take a look at that. I actually have a wonderful video set up for you here. As Keisha mentioned, the best view, today's best viewing is on a desktop, but if you're on maybe a mobile, you might not be able to watch the video. Don't worry about that because it is available on YouTube. All right, so I hope you enjoy. All right, so definitely, a wonderful feature that we have on our online banking for those of you who bank with RBC. And if you missed it, like I mentioned, it is available on YouTube. So please, you can go there and have a look. The great thing with that is the score simulator, and it's really wonderful. So those of you who have a chance, play around with it, and I'm sure you'll find it very interesting. Yeah, so let's dig a little bit deeper into what makes up our credit score. This is such an important part here. So there are several factors that influence your credit score. So the most two important factors would be your payment history and your credit utilization. So you want to make sure when it comes to payment history that you pay all your bills on time. Paying your bills late can have an effect, right? You don't want that account being sent to a collection agency. It really does have a negative impact on your credit score. And when we talk about credit utilization, this is also known as a balance to limit ratio. You don't want to max out your credit. So try to keep a month-to-month balance of less than 50% on your credit limit, as it will affect your credit score. So for example, if your credit card limit is $1,000, try to keep a month-to-month balance of less than $500. Now, looking at the chart here, there are also other factors that are included. Is new credit application. So how frequently do you apply for new credits? This will affect your score. Only apply for credit that you really need. Too many inquiries in a short period of time can sometimes be flagged as a sign of financial difficulties. It can also be seen as someone overextending themselves by trying to take on more debt that they can repay. Let's look at credit variety. So, how balanced is your mix of credits? A healthy credit profile has a balanced mix of credit accounts and loans. And then, of course, there's your history. So having a longer history on your credit accounts earns you more points. So avoid closing your accounts if you may need them in the future. A good credit history is definitely something that is built over time. And I'm sure that's something that you're going to hear over again. And of course, too many accounts. So having access to too much credit, like having multiple credit cards or loans, can be a warning sign, as mentioned, as financial distress. It can also make it difficult for you to borrow money in the future. Even if you aren't using the credit card, a bank will look at the credit you have access to and evaluate your financial health that way. So now that you know a little bit more about credit and what impact your ability to get it, let's review some best practices. And that will will take us, to what are some good habits that we can build. So this is the last section that we have for today. And so really it's, how to build good credit, and, developing those habits. So looking at the slide here, I'm sure many of you might be getting a little bit hungry since we're heading close to lunchtime for those of you who are in the same, time zone as us. So yeah, building good credit and practicing good credit habits today is definitely, it's something you might need to have access to that in the future. So how are we going to do that to prepare ourselves for that time? So good debt is an investment, right? So on the left we have, the salad. So good debt is an investment, and it definitely, it will grow in value over time or generate long-term income. Good debt generally has lower interest rates. So something like taking out a student loan to pay for an education will get you a job, that will, sustain you for the future. So a perfect example would be something like that. Another example would be, taking out a loan to start your own business so that you have control over your own career. And of course, another would be like, buying property that would appreciate in value over time. Now, of course, naturally, right on the other side of good is bad. It is looking a little delicious, though, with that dessert. But, bad debt is incurred to purchase things that quickly lose their value and do not generate long-term income. Bad debt is also a debt that carries, high interest rates, like credit cards. And because bad debt is more expensive to borrow, it's especially important to pay off on time. So definitely something that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at that. Now, let's look at the ways here that we can definitely, build on those habits that we talked about. So first of all, number one is you're definitely going to want to start early. Pay all your bills on time. As mentioned, paying them late and having them go to collection agencies can have a negative, effect on your history and score. Reduce your debts. So pay more than the monthly minimum. Prioritize paying off higher interest debts first, such as credit cards. And you'll want to do this because, those debts are costing you more in interest than the other ones. And this will help you to reduce your overall cost of borrowing and keep your debt at a manageable level. And of course, you're going to want to correct any errors on your credit report. So checking your credit report annually to ensure it's accurate. And it's a good way also to prevent, any fraud and to keep your history clean. Use credit cards responsibly. So you don't only use credit cards for things that you'll be able to pay back. It's very important to know that this money that we get from a credit card is not a gift, right? It's a loan. We're only borrowing that money temporarily, and we do have to give it back. And of course, like I mentioned, start early and be patient. Good credit behavior takes months or even years to build your history and score. And so that's why it's so important to learn the necessities now. Keep in mind that every time you apply for new credit, it shows up on your credit score. And so just be mindful, right? When you walk into a store and they're trying to hand you a credit card, do I need that credit card, right? We don't need to apply every single store that we go into, and just make sure that we're choosing wisely. So I hope that you were able to benefit from the information that Felipe and I shared for you today. We definitely, as I mentioned, do have some time for some question and answers, and that will bring us right to that section. You can use the Q&A box that's there, and we will go from there. So thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that great information that you provided to us today. Obviously, it's always a refresher for me to listen to this because, sometimes we forget how credit score works or how to build your credit score, and even a history. So first is that we are definitely going to open up the floor for some Q&A. I just want to let everybody know that this is a safe space, so you can ask any questions. There is no silly questions. We're here for you right now to discuss and answer anything that you may have. So feel free to shoot us any questions. We do have one right now. I'll leave in a question. There says, does the type of spend on a credit card affect your credit score? So how, I'm assuming the type of spending on a credit card affects your credit score. So yes, in a way, it doesn't affect it. It only affects it if you don't make payments, or if you carry high balances. I believe Sarah was speaking about that earlier. The credit card is meant to be used, and that's how you build your credit score and your credit history. So how much you spend is not really going to affect your score in a bad way, if that's what you mean. But what affects it is if you're carrying a balance greater than 50% of the car. So if you have $1,000 credit card and you use $1,000 of it, but you only pay $100 down to principal, you're carrying a $900 balance every month, that will affect your credit score. So your score will not go up. So it's always good to make payments and bring them down when it comes to the credit card. And like I said, when it comes to credit cards, you can definitely just use them. Don't be afraid to use them if you need to use it. But just make sure you make those payments and bring the principal down, and you don't carry balances for a long period of time. Besides carrying, balances, greater balances than 50% of the limit, it's always good to make the minimum payments, so never miss your payments, because that can definitely affect your credit score and your credit history as well.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add to that too is when the question here talks about types of spends. So definitely, there's shopping, right? And then there's also like cash advance, and that would have a difference on, the interest rate now that you're borrowing at, because it's different. And then there's usually a charge, when you do cash advance. So that's something to keep in mind when you're borrowing off your credit card. What is it we're borrowing? Are we doing shopping, or are we, borrowing actually cash off the card? Because that interest rate is different, and then you start getting charged right away for that. So just something to keep in mind about that.
A second question here is, could you please tell the procedure to check our credit report annually? Also, please advise that checking the report annually impacts your credit score. Ferry, do you want to touch on this?
So so as mentioned in the video that was played earlier, so if you are an RBC client, right, you're able to check your credit score right through your online banking. It's very easy, and it's available to you there. If you don't bank with RBC, the other companies that mentioned, like TransUnion, is there for you. But like I mentioned, right, sometimes there can be a fee for things, so just be aware of that. And when we're checking our credit score, right, we want to know, like, why are we checking our credit score, right? It's not something that we're going to go daily and keep pulling our credit score. Usually, if someone's looking to purchase a property, or make a big purchase, maybe they're getting a credit card. That's when these type of things will be looked at, right? But I wouldn't say something you need to be checking daily or weekly, because remember, this is something that it's built over time. And as much as we want to see that number change or increase and get higher, it will only happen, right? If time allows, if we give it that time. So so just something to keep in mind with that. Okay, so there's another question. So there's another question here that says, do you have steps for newcomers? So are newcomers coming and they want to build their credits, what can they do?
So when it comes to basically steps in building good credit habit, I would definitely say one of the steps that I give all newcomers is basically, when you have a credit card, an easy way, but like Farah said, this does take time. You have to be patient with building your score. An easy way to build your score is just use your credit card for all payments that you do have cash for, or money in your account for. So if you're going to go out for groceries, you're going to pay with your debit card. Use your credit card instead. Now, a good way to show payment history is the same day you could actually go back. You don't have to wait for your statement. You can sign in online, see how much you spent, and pay that amount, that balance back into the credit card. That is a good way to show payment history, as you're not missing payments, and on top of that, you're not paying any interest, you're not carrying any balances. That is a good way to a good step to take into building good credit score. And also, just the one thing that we're going to keep reiterating here is just always make your payments on time. That is the best way to keep a good credit score to build, and as well as show the history that you're making your payments always on time and you're not missing anything. That is one of the key things that you have to take into consideration. It's just to never miss those payments or make your minimum payments, especially when it comes to credit cards. But those are the steps. There's really no, I would say, scientific way to build good credit besides those simple steps right there.
Yeah, and like Felipe mentioned, right? Obviously, making those your payments. But if you can't make that to pay off that balance, minimum payment at least, right? Is what you want to make sure you're doing.
Okay, so we got another question here. It says, is there a credit score penalty for paying up the credit card bill multiple times a month? And that's no. Like I just explained earlier, if you use your card and you decide to pay the same day or within the next hour or half an hour, no, it doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, it doesn't show good payment history on your end because you're not waiting for the statement. You're going online, you can pay right away. But there's no penalty if you pay more than once in a month. So you're fine with that.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, do you want to add something, Farah?
No, I was just going to read. So there's a question here, and it's a good question. If I pay the balance, will the entire limit become available to me again? And so that's exactly what it is, right? Once you paid it back, now that entire amount is available to you. So say, your credit limit is $1,000 and you did shopping and you spent $300, right? You pay back that $300. Now that $12,000 is available to you to use.
Now, I do want to add on to that as well. Keep in mind what we're first talking about is that if you pay the balance, the limit is available to you again. But that's if it's an RBC credit card. Let's say you have, like Farah said, you have multiple cards. You have 3-4 cards, which is good for building your credit score and history. But let's say you have another institution's card or another company card. Let's say like a Capital One card, for example. If you make that payment through RBC online banking, just know that it does take 2 to 3 business days for that payment to be processed and that money to reach that other credit card. So when Farah said yes, the limit is available to you right away. That's if you're paying from your RBC account to an RBC credit card. If you are paying to another credit card that has nothing to do with RBC, that can take 2 to 3 business days. So that is a tricky thing to remember. Also, what does pre-qualification for auto loan mean? And does this affect your credit score? Pre-qualification basically just means it's another fancy word for pre-approval, or what they'll say is they come in and do like a pre-qualification, and they gather all your information to see how much you can qualify for when it comes to an auto loan. This can affect your credit if they are pulling up your credit score. If you're doing a lot of applications within a short time frame, all these different, with different companies or different banks, this can affect your credit score because it kind of raises a red flag because it makes it seem like you're in desperate need of credit. So you want to be careful when applying at different, let's say, in different companies or banks, because let's say you go to an auto dealership and they pull up your credit score, but then you want to go to the bank and apply for another loan. We're pulling up your credit bureau more than once, and those are hard hits on your credit bureau, and that will affect your score. And you can't bring it down if you work really hard to bring it over, let's say, 600 or 700. So again, pre-qualification is just they want to know what your salary is and how much they can approve you for when it comes to a car loan.
So there's like a comment here. Like Bank with RBC, notice that on my RBC, I've noticed on RBC, the credit score gets updated monthly. So each month we can check, how the score has moved. However, it only shows the score amount. In addition to this, are we able to view any detailed report that lists, our debts to ensure, this is accurate? So a great question. Like we mentioned, your score is available, through your online banking. So not only is your score shown, but it also shows details as well. And it shows, basically like, how many inquiries you had, your accounts, your history, and also, like when the last time your credit, was hit. So there is some more details that's available to you there other than just the score. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to add anything onto that, Felipe, but yeah, there's more that you can see viewing.
I was say, I know I have some clients that they've gone in and they're like, I can't see this is not showing up on my credit report or my credit history. Again, because there are so many companies that have credit facilities, and keep in mind that even like cell phones or utility companies, they are part of building your credit as well in a way. Well, that they don't really build your credit, but it shows because they want to know how your payment history is made, right? It will show on your bureau as well. So not everything will show all at once. You have to give it some time before all the credit bureaus get that information from these different companies, whether it's a credit card, a bank, or anything that has to do that provides a service. Because believe it or not, even at times where, let's say, for example, you haven't paid something as I can't even think of something off the top of my head, but anything that has to do with the service, and if you haven't made a payment to them, it can affect your score because it can show as what we call a derogatory payment, which shows that you haven't made payments to this thing, and that will affect your score, and it will show on your history as well. So all of that does show up on your bill, but just give it some time. We have some more questions here. Let's see.
Yeah, so we'll take one
more. Do we still have time? I was going to say, do we have time to answer maybe one or two more?
So we have time for one more, and then we'll give it back to Keisha. So I think someone can talk about their landlord asking for their credit score and getting their credit history. Like you just mentioned, right? Like that's something that takes time, and so if you're if you let your landlord know to be a bit understanding, with that, because it is something that takes it's built over time, and you need to have payments and have that going, right, in order for you to build that.
The landlord basically want to know, like, how well you make payments. That's basically what I want to do. Keep in mind that they do have to follow up and make sure that everything is fine on your end. It's just a tricky situation. I know there's something that we're using going forward, especially for newcomers, that there's another, I believe, company that's going to be used. We can use where it shows that when you're making payments to your landlord, it will apply to your credit history and report now. But for more questions in regards to that, like we are short on time. We are going to wrap it up right now here and pass out to Keisha. But if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to Farah or myself. As